Deep beneath the churning surface of the South China Sea, approximately 60 miles off the coast of Kuantan, Malaysia, a silent war is being waged against the dead. For decades, the abyss here was defined by a heavy, respectful silence, a liquid shroud covering the final resting place of 327 British sailors. But today, that silence is shattered by the rhythmic, industrial thud of hydraulic chisels and the muffled roar of underwater explosives. This isn't a recovery mission sanctioned by any government, nor is it a scientific expedition. It is a calculated, cold-blooded heist. The target is the HMS Prince of Wales, a King George V-class battleship that once stood as the pinnacle of British naval engineering. While most documentaries focus on her dramatic sinking at the hands of Japanese bombers in 1941, the real tragedy is happening right now, in the present tense. Modern-day scavengers, operating from massive grab ships, are literally carving up the wreck, ignoring its status as a protected war grave to satisfy the global demand for a very specific and rare commodity. They're not looking for gold or silver. They're hunting for the very bones of the ship itself. To understand the audacity of this crime, one must first appreciate the sheer technical magnitude of the vessel being dismantled. The HMS Prince of Wales was a 43,000-ton Titan, a floating fortress protected by a massive 14.7-inch thick armor belt designed to withstand the heaviest ordnance in the world. Launched in 1939, she represented the absolute zenith of pre-war naval architecture. Her main battery consisted of 10 14-inch Mark VII guns, housed in unique quadruple and twin turrets that were wonders of mechanical complexity. This was the ship that stood toe-to-toe with the Bismarck in the freezing waters of the Denmark Strait, landing the critical blows that punctured the German battleship's fuel tanks and sealed its fate. For the veterans and naval historians watching the current destruction, the Prince of Wales isn't just a pile of scrap. It is a monument to the sailors who survived the horrors of the Atlantic only to perish in the tropical heat of the Pacific. It was the centerpiece of Force Z, a naval task force sent by Winston Churchill to Singapore as a deterrent to Japanese expansion, a mission that would ultimately end in one of the most shocking naval defeats in British history. The reason these modern pirates are risking international arrest to blast apart a 745-foot hull lies in a fascinating intersection of history and high-tech physics. The steel used to construct the Prince of Wales is known as low-background steel. Because it was forged and cast before the first atomic bombs were detonated in 1945, it does not contain the trace radionuclides, specifically cobalt-60, that have contaminated all steel produced in the post-atomic age. For sensitive scientific equipment like Geiger counters, medical sensors, and deep space satellites, this clean steel is invaluable. While modern steel can be made low background through expensive chemical processes, it is far cheaper for unscrupulous salvage operators to simply mine it from the bottom of the ocean. These pirates utilize grab ships, which are essentially massive floating cranes equipped with multi-ton hydraulic claws. They hover over the wreck site, drop 50-ton hardened steel chisels to shatter the armored hull into manageable chunks, and then grab the metal, dragging it to the surface along with whatever, or whoever, is tangled in the wreckage. The scale of the illegal salvage is staggering and has accelerated wildly in the last 5 years. Recent sonar surveys and diver reports reveal a scene of underwater carnage that looks more like a demolition site than a shipwreck. The ship's massive bronze propellers, each weighing over 30 tons, were among the first items to be hacked away. Now, the scavengers have moved on to the main hull, tearing through the 14-inch thick steel plates. The Prince of Wales lies upside down on the seabed, her massive 14-inch guns partially buried in the silt, but even these are not safe. The scavengers use explosives to crack the turrets open, seeking the high-quality metals within the firing mechanisms. This isn't just a theft of property, it is a desecration of a cemetery. Under the Protection of Military Remains Act, the site is legally off-limits, yet the vastness of the South China Sea makes policing the wreck nearly impossible. The pirates often operate under the guise of clearing seabed debris, or use local fishing vessels as scouts to alert them to naval patrols. By the time a British or Malaysian frigate arrives on the scene, the grab ship has often already vanished, leaving behind a scarred, unrecognizable heap of twisted metal where a majestic battleship once lay. The industrial-scale looting of the HMS Prince of Wales is not a series of isolated incidents, but a professional operation spearheaded by a fleet of ghost ships that have perfected the art of maritime evasion. At the center of this modern crime syndicate is a vessel that has become infamous among naval historians and maritime authorities, the Kuantan 68. This 122-meter Chinese-registered grab dredger is a purpose-built scavenger, a mechanical beast designed for the sole purpose of extracting massive quantities of metal from a seafloor. Unlike traditional salvage vessels that might use divers to carefully recover artifacts, the Kuantan 68 uses a grab method that is as violent as it is efficient. It utilizes a massive crane to drop a 50-ton chisel weight onto the wreck, shattering the 14-inch thick Krupp cemented armor plates of the battleship like glass. Once the hull is breached, the crane's hydraulic claws reach down into the dark, tearing away huge sections of the ship's engineering spaces and magazine rooms. The forensic tracking of this ship reveals a chilling level of premeditation. Data from the Maritime Observatory shows that throughout 2022 and 2023, the Kuantan 68 would go dark by turning off its automatic identification system, AIS, as it approached the coordinates of the 4C wrecks. It would vanish from global tracking maps for a week at a time, only to reappear 100 nautical miles away, its deck piled high with the rusted, recognizable remains of British naval power. The logistics of this theft are staggering, involving a sophisticated supply chain that spans multiple countries and legal jurisdictions. Investigation into the Kuantan 68's movements revealed that it made at least 5 separate trips to an illegal scrapyard in Kampung Belangkar, Malaysia, carrying an estimated $4 million worth of looted metal in a single 18-month period. The evidence of this desecration was hidden in plain sight until a series of social media posts blew the whistle. A local scrapyard worker, apparently unaware of the international crime they were witnessing, posted a TikTok video set to upbeat music showing a massive, rusted cannon barrel being unloaded from a dredger. Experts quickly identified the artifact as a 5.25-inch QF Mark I anti-aircraft gun, the exact secondary armament carried by the Prince of Wales. When Malaysian authorities finally raided the site in May 2023, they found a scene of total industrial carnage. Along with the cannons, the police discovered 2 massive bower anchors, hundreds of rounds of unexploded 5.25-inch and 14-inch ammunition, and huge slabs of pre-atomic steel. The presence of live ordnance at the scrapyard was so dangerous that it required a specialized bomb disposal unit to conduct controlled explosions on the very beach where the ship's remains had been dumped. This isn't just about the theft of steel. It is a systematic eradication of history that exploits a series of gray zones in international maritime law. The pirates operate in the exclusive economic zone of Malaysia, a region where patrolling the vast expanse of the South China Sea is a constant challenge for the Royal Malaysian Navy. The scavengers often hide behind legitimate-looking contracts for seabed clearance, or the removal of modern cargo shipwrecks that pose a hazard to navigation. By using these permits as a front, they can hover over a protected war grave for weeks without drawing immediate suspicion from local coast guards. Furthermore, the ownership of the Kuantan 68 itself is a maze of shell companies, registered to a firm in Fuzhou, China, but often claimed to be chartered by various local Malaysian or Indonesian entities. The ship is a legal chameleon that is difficult to pin down in court. Even when the vessel was detained in 2023, the legal battle became a diplomatic nightmare, with the Chinese Foreign Ministry intervening to protect the lawful rights of the crew. By mid-2024, despite the forensic evidence of looting, the ship was reportedly released and seen operating as far away as the coast of South Africa, likely searching for its next target. The human cost of this illegal salvage is what makes the situation truly unforgivable to the families of the 842 men lost on that December day in 1941. Reports from the 2023 investigation included the horrifying discovery of human remains mixed among the scrap metal at the Johor scrapyard. Because the Prince of Wales capsized as she sank, many of the sailors were trapped in the engine rooms and lower decks, the very areas the scavengers target for their high-value copper and brass components. When the grab ships claws tear into the wreck, they're not just taking metal. They're disturbing the final resting place of boys as young as 18 who were never given a proper burial. Professional divers who have visited the site since the 2023 raids describe a scene of underwater devastation that is almost unrecognizable from the relatively intact hull photograph just a decade ago. As of 2025, some experts believe that nearly 70% of the HMS Prince of Wales has been obliterated. The ship that once represented the ultimate shield of the British Empire has been reduced to a dent in the seabed, her 14-inch guns silenced forever by a crane and a checkbook. The mechanical violence inflicted upon the HMS Prince of Wales has triggered an environmental crisis that most observers never anticipated from a ship that sank over 80 years ago. When the Prince of Wales went down, she was carrying approximately 3,390 tons of heavy fuel oil. While much of that was lost during the initial sinking, official Royal Navy surveys conducted as late as 2019 estimated that over 1,000 cubic meters of oil remained trapped within her reinforced fuel bunkers. For decades, this oil was safely entombed behind 14 inches of armor steel, but the grab ships have changed the math. By using 50-ton chisels to smash through the hull, salvagers have punctured these long-sealed tanks, leading to significant, undocumented oil slicks. In 2023, Malaysian fishermen reported a 10-kilometer-long oil spill emanating directly from the coordinates of the wreck, an event that decimated local fisheries for weeks. This is the hidden cost of illegal salvage. The scavengers aren't just stealing history. They are poisoning the very waters that serve as the lifeblood for the surrounding coastal communities. Beyond the oil, the wreck of the Prince of Wales is essentially a massive, decaying underwater armory. She sank with thousands of rounds of unexploded ordnance, including her 14-inch main battery shells and the 5.25-inch secondary ammunition. As the salvagers tear the ship apart, they are disturbing these highly unstable explosives. Forensic divers have reported seeing intact cordite and high-explosive shells scattered across the seabed like discarded trash, no longer safely contained within the ship's magazines. The danger this poses to the looters themselves is extreme, but the broader risk is the chemical leaching of heavy metals like mercury and lead into the marine ecosystem. These warships were built with toxic materials that were never meant to be released in an industrial demolition site. As the metal is ripped away, the protective artificial reef that the ship once provided is replaced by a toxic scar on the ocean floor, where the microbiology of the sediment is being permanently altered by the release of decades-old pollutants. The international response to this desecration has reached a fever pitch as of late 2025. In October 2025, the Royal Navy launched Operation High Mast, led by the modern HMS Prince of Wales, the second ship to bear the name and current fleet flagship. This carrier-led task force conducted a solemn committal service directly over the wreck site of its namesake, a symbolic act of reclaiming the territory. However, the legal reality remains a nightmare of sovereign immunity versus regional enforcement. While the UK asserts that the ship remains British property under international law, the site lies within Malaysia's exclusive economic zone. This jurisdictional gap has allowed ships like the Kuantan 68 to exploit the legal gray zone. In response, a new coalition of maritime domain awareness initiatives has been established, involving the UK, Malaysia, and the United States. These agencies are now utilizing high-frequency satellite monitoring and dark ship detection algorithms to track any vessel that turns off its transponders near the 4C coordinates. The goal is no longer just documentation, it is active deterrence. Despite these efforts, The tragic truth is that the HMS Prince of Wales may already be past the point of no return. Experts from a National Museum of the Royal Navy suggest that by the time the current surge in illegal salvage is halted, as much as 80% of the ship's structural integrity will have been lost. What was once the most powerful battleship in the British Empire is being reduced to a field of debris and toxic waste. The bells of the Prince of Wales and the Repulse were recovered years ago and are now held in Portsmouth to protect them from looters, but they are among the few pieces of these ships that will survive for future generations to see. For the 327 men who remain in the South China Sea, the battle is no longer against the Japanese bombers of 1941, but against the relentless, cold efficiency of the 21st century scrap market. The world is watching a funeral pyre that has been burning underwater for years, and the time to save what remains is running out. The illegal demolition of the HMS Prince of Wales has transformed a historical tragedy into a modern forensic investigation, revealing a global black market that thrives on the bones of the past. As of early 2026, the data indicates that this is no longer a matter of petty theft, but a high-stakes industrial enterprise. The value of pre-atomic steel has surged as precision manufacturing for the next generation of quantum computers and deep space sensors reaches a fever pitch. Because this steel was forged before 1945, it lacks the radioactive isotopes that interfere with hypersensitive sensors. For a scavenger, a single ton of this low background armor plating is worth significantly more than standard recycled scrap. This economic incentive has created a gold rush in the South China Sea, where the Prince of Wales is being treated not as a monument, but as an ore deposit to be mined with reckless efficiency. The mechanical execution of these grabs is a masterclass in maritime criminality. Intelligence gathered from the 2025 Operation High Mast mission, which saw the modern carrier HMS Prince of Wales lead a task force to the site, confirmed that the wreck is now being targeted by swarm tactics. Small, inconspicuous barges often linger over the site for days, appearing on radar as simple fishing vessels. Once they confirm known naval patrols are in the vicinity, they signal for the heavy lifters. The Chuan Hong 68, the notorious dredger previously detained by Malaysian authorities, was reported active again in late 2025, operating under a new name and a different flag. These vessels utilize specialized depth chisels, massive, weighted steel beams dropped from heights of 60 meters above the seafloor. The kinetic energy from these drops is enough to crack even the 14-inch hardened Krupp-cemented steel that protected the ship's vital organs. Once the hull is fractured, the hydraulic grabs reach into the wound, dragging out twisted masses of steel, electrical wiring, and the silent remains of the men who called the ship home. The forensic evidence left behind at illegal scrapyards, such as the one raided in Kampung Belunker, tells a harrowing story of what is being lost. In mid-2025, investigators recovered massive 5.25-inch gun barrels and two of the ship's 10-ton bower anchors from a pile of industrial waste. These weren't just artifacts. They were pieces of the ship's primary defense systems, torn from their mountings with such force that the surrounding deck plating was shredded like paper. More disturbingly, the presence of live, 80-year-old ammunition at these sites has created a public safety crisis. The Prince of Wales went down with thousands of rounds of high-explosive shells. As the scavengers smash through the magazines, they are scattering unstable cordite and TNT across the seabed. This has created an underwater minefield that makes future archaeological preservation or respectful diving almost impossible. Beyond the physical theft, the environmental impact of this salvage is reaching a breaking point. The Prince of Wales was a dirty sinker, going down with over 3,000 tons of heavy fuel oil. For 8 decades, this oil was safely contained within the double-bottomed hull and armored tanks. However, the use of explosives and heavy chisels has breached these long-dormant containers. Satellite imagery from 2025 has documented persistent oil plumes, some stretching for 5 miles, emanating from the wreck site. These spills are not just historical footnotes. They're active pollutants destroying the coral reefs and fishing grounds that sustain local Malaysian communities. The pirates aren't just stealing British history. They are poisoning the regional future, all to extract a few hundred tons of clean steel. The human element remains the most painful aspect of this modern crime. The Royal Navy's Joint Casualty and Compassionate Center, JCCC, has been tasked with the grim reality of identifying human remains recovered from scrap heaps on land. Because the Prince of Wales capsized as she sank, many of the 327 sailors were trapped in the lower engineering spaces, the exact areas the scavengers target for their valuable copper and brass piping. When the grab ships claws tear into these spaces, they are essentially grave robbing at 60 meters depth. Veterans organizations, particularly those in the UK and US with ties to Pacific naval history, have expressed outrage at the legal lethargy that has allowed this to continue. While the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, provides sovereign immunity for sunken warships, the gray zones of international waters make enforcement a game of cat and mouse. As we move through 2026, the window of opportunity to save what remains of the HMS Prince of Wales is closing. High-resolution sonar scans taken by the Royal Navy in late 2025 show that nearly 70% of the hull's structural integrity has been compromised. The ship is no longer the recognizable battleship that faced the Bismarck. It is a skeleton picked clean by industrial vultures. The international community is now at a crossroads. Either implement a no-fly/no-sail zone around these protected war graves using AI-driven satellite monitoring, or accept that one of the most significant monuments of World War II will be entirely erased within a decade. The Prince of Wales survived the most intensive air attack of her time, only to be dismantled in the dark by a crane and a checkbook. The legacy of the Prince of Wales is a reminder that history is not static. It is something that must be actively defended. The men who went down with their ship on December 10, 1941, were promised a permanent war grave, a place of honor and rest. Today, that promise is being broken every time a hydraulic claw reaches for the seabed. This isn't just a story about a shipwreck. It's a warning about the lengths to which modern industry will go to mine the past for profit. If we cannot protect a 43,000-ton battleship from being stolen in broad daylight, then no part of our maritime heritage is safe. The story of the HMS Prince of Wales is no longer just a chapter in a history book. It is an ongoing crime scene, and the world is running out of time to catch the thieves.